Baghdad, April 2003. The regime's final broadcast plays on state television. Saddam's voice, recorded days earlier, addresses a nation that no longer exists. His bunker is surrounded. His army has dissolved. His intelligence apparatus has gone silent. Within 72 hours, the structure he built over 3 decades will be reduced to rubble. But the collapse wasn't caused by superior firepower or Western cunning alone. It was systematic, mechanical, inevitable. These are the 10 fatal errors of Saddam Hussein. The regime's vulnerability wasn't born in 2003. It was engineered into the system from the beginning.
Error number 10.
Family members occupied critical military and security positions not by competence but by blood. Saddam's sons Uday and Qusay controlled the Republican Guard and secret police. His half-brother Barzan headed intelligence. Competence became irrelevant. Loyalty through kinship became the only metric. Therefore, when external pressure mounted, the regime had no institutional depth, only a family holding back the tide.
Error number 9.
In 1979, Saddam ordered a mass execution of Ba'ath Party members he deemed threats. He forced surviving members to participate in the killings, binding them to him through complicity. Anyone perceived as ambitious, independent, or capable enough to threaten him was eliminated. Generals who won battles were executed. Technocrats who showed initiative were imprisoned. The message was clear: survival meant obedience, not excellence. But this created a void at every level. Military leadership became risk-averse. Economic planning became stagnant. Innovation ceased entirely.
Error number 8.
The regime's entire financial model relied on petroleum exports. When oil prices fluctuated, the state had no secondary economy to absorb the shock. Wars with Iran drained reserves. Sanctions after Kuwait further strangled liquidity. The state couldn't build infrastructure, couldn't modernize agriculture, couldn't create economic resilience. Therefore, by the 1990s, Iraq's economy was a single thread. Cut it and everything collapses.
Error number 7.
Saddam created a system where bad news traveled upward only if filtered through layers of subordinates terrified of delivering it. Military defeats were reframed as tactical repositioning. Economic collapse was reported as temporary adjustment. Intelligence agencies competed to tell him what he wanted to hear, not what was actually happening. The regime's decision-making became untethered from reality, a fatal structural error when facing an external threat that required accurate assessment. The system was already fractured. Now Saddam's military decisions would shatter it completely.
Error number 6.
Saddam believed possession of chemical and biological weapons would deter invasion. He had used them against Iran and Kurdish populations. Therefore, he assumed they would paralyze Western decision-making. But this miscalculation ignored a fundamental asymmetry. The US military had overwhelming air superiority and precision strike capability. Chemical weapons are effective in symmetrical warfare. Against a technologically superior opponent, they are irrelevant. Saddam optimized for the wrong threat.
Error number 5.
In August 1990, Saddam ordered the invasion to seize its oil reserves and resolve Iraq's debt crisis. He believed the international community would tolerate it, or that the US would not intervene. He was wrong on both counts. The invasion triggered a coalition of 35 nations, and the first major military intervention of the post-Cold War era. But more critically, it shifted Iraq from regional aggressor to isolated pariah. Diplomatic pathways closed, economic isolation deepened. The regime became dependent on internal control mechanisms alone, exactly when external threats were mounting.
Error number 4.
Between 1991 and 2003, Saddam systematically removed or sidelined generals who had combat experience or independent strategic thinking. General Nizar al-Khazraji, who had managed the Iran-Iraq War, was eventually exiled. General Ra'ad al-Hamdani, one of the few capable commanders, was marginalized. In their place, Saddam appointed loyalists without military training. When the 2003 invasion began, the Iraqi military had no coherent command structure, no strategic reserves, and no adaptive leadership. The army collapsed not because of American superiority alone, but because it had been hollowed out from within.
Error number 3.
Saddam genuinely believed that Iraqis would rally to defend him against external aggression. He expected mass mobilization, popular resistance, and nationalist uprising. This belief was rooted in propaganda fed back to him by terrified subordinates. In reality, the population was exhausted by decades of war, sanctions, and repression. When the invasion came, there was no uprising. Soldiers deserted. Entire units surrendered without firing a shot. The regime's security forces had been so brutal that the population saw liberation, not invasion.
Error number 2.
As the invasion progressed, Saddam retreated into a series of underground bunkers attempting to direct the war from isolation. But bunkers don't command armies, communication systems do. His orders became increasingly detached from battlefield reality. He issued directives that contradicted the actual military situation. He ordered counterattacks that were logistically impossible. His isolation from real-time information meant that every decision was made on a 24 to 48-hour delay, fighting a war that had already moved past him. The regime's collapse was not a sudden catastrophe. It was the inevitable conclusion of a single structural error that Saddam made decades earlier.
Error number 1.
Every institutional decision Saddam made was optimized for one outcome, preventing a coup d'etat. He fragmented the military into competing units, so no general could accumulate enough power to challenge him. He created multiple intelligence agencies that spied on each other. He rotated commanders constantly. He surrounded himself with family members and a tiny inner circle. This made him personally secure. It made the state functionally incapable of responding to external threats. A state organized entirely around preventing internal betrayal cannot defend itself against external invasion. By 2003, Iraq's military and administrative apparatus were not designed to fight wars. They were designed to fight coups. When the invasion came, the system had no redundancy, no adaptive capacity, no independent command authority. The structure that kept Saddam in power for 24 years made the regime's defeat inevitable within 3 weeks. This wasn't a tactical error that could be corrected with better generals or different strategies. It was a structural error embedded in the regime's DNA. You cannot simultaneously prevent internal threats and defend against external ones using the same mechanisms. Saddam chose internal security. The cost was external vulnerability. The mechanism that protected him from his own people left him defenseless against everyone else. When that mechanism finally failed, when the Republican Guard dissolved and his inner circle scattered, there was nothing left to hold the state together. Saddam Hussein's regime collapsed because power organized entirely around the leader's survival cannot survive the leader's removal. The lesson extends beyond Iraq. Any system that prioritizes the security of authority over the function of institutions creates the conditions for its own collapse. That principle remains relevant wherever power concentrates without institutional checks.